about classifying triangles and how we talk about them. So the first way you can classify a triangle is by its sides. So when we're classifying by sides, there's three different categories that a triangle can fall under. The first one is a scalene triangle. A scalene triangle means no congruent sides, or none of the sides are the same. So that triangle would look something like this. If I can get it to work. That triangle would look something like this, where this side would be 7, this side would be 9, and this side would be 5. All three sides are different, and if there were just triangle markings on there, it would look just like this. These lines on these sides of these triangles are talking about whether they're the same. So if this side has one line and this side has two, you know those two things are different. So whether by using numbers or just triangle markings, you could see what a scalene triangle looks like. The next triangle would be an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has two congruent sides. So, for example, what an isosceles triangle would look like is something like this, where we got, if I just use the triangle markings, it would look like this. We know these two sides on this side and this side are the same because they both have two triangle markings. If they were numbers, it would be like this, 2, 7, and 7. We know these two sides are the same because they're both 7. That would be an isosceles triangle, again, with two congruent sides. The last one would be an equilateral triangle. Which is exactly like it sounds. An equilateral triangle is all three sides congruent or the same. That's what the word congruent means. Congruent means the same. So that picture would look something like this. If you're just using triangle markings or side markings, if they only have one line, you know they're all the same. Or you could see the numbers, 8, 8, 8. That would make this triangle equilateral. So those are the three different kinds when classifying by sides. Again, that is a very important concept. That's something we got to understand, is classifying by sides. Scalene, isosceles, and equilateral. The next kind of triangle classification is by angles. So for classifying a triangle by angles, there are also three different kinds of triangles. The first one is an acute triangle. Acute, meaning all three angles are less than 90. So an example of what an acute triangle would look like would be something like this, where we had a triangle and this was 75, this was 85, and this angle was 20 degrees. If all three of those angles are less than 90 degrees, then we know it's an acute triangle. The next one is a right triangle, which we've already talked about because of Pythagorean theorem and those kinds of things. A right triangle is a triangle with a right angle. Or an angle that equals 90 degrees. So that would look something like this, and we've seen these. This would be the example of a right triangle because there's your right angle right there. And lastly, we've got an equal angular triangle. And an equal angle triangle is where all angles are equal. So, for example, there's only one equilateral triangle, and it looks like this. 60, 60, and 60. So the last thing to remember when we're talking about classifying by angles, this is an important concept, and also the next thing I'm going to say is an important concept, is angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So any triangle, all the angles on the inside have to add up to 180 degrees. Very important concept right there. Got to remember that. Again, this one adds up to 180 because 60 plus 60 plus 60 is 180. This one up here, 75 plus 85 plus 20, also equals 180 degrees. So, very important to remember that. All right. So now, as we're talking about the angle measure of a triangle, the first thing we're going to do, if we got asked a question, or here's an example, we want to find the third angle. And you get angle number 1 is equal to 66, and angle number 2 is equal to 37. And they want us to find out what angle 3 is, and this is what we're talking about, a triangle. So we don't know what angle 3 is. Well, we know all three angles have to add up to 180 degrees because we know in triangles it equals 180 degrees. So that means angle 1 plus angle 2 plus angle 3 has to equal 180 degrees. So I plug in what I know. That would be 66 plus 37 plus, we don't know what that is, so x is equal to 180 degrees. Now this is just an equation that we have to solve. So first thing we need to do is combine like terms. So we would combine the numbers that are together on that side, which means we would take 66 and add it to 37. We get 103 plus x is equal to 180. Then we have to solve for x, so we got to get x by itself. So we subtract 103 from both sides because you got to do the opposite when you're moving across that equal sign. This comes down, and you get x is equal to 180 minus 103, which is 77. So the third angle would be 77 degrees. All right, if we wanted to say they gave us a triangle that looks like this. And they give us R, S, T. And they tell us that R is 3x degrees. S is x degrees. And T is x plus 40 degrees. And they want to find out what all three of these degree measures are. Well, the first thing we got to do is find out what x is, and then we can find out what each of these angles are. So again, we know that any triangle equals 180 degrees. So that means I can take all of these angles and add them up and equal them to 180 degrees. So that would be 3x plus x plus 40 is equal to 180 degrees. Now, I combine like terms, so that means I need to pull these x's all together. So 3x plus x, that would be 5x plus 40 is equal to 180 degrees. Now I need to get this term by itself, this x term, so I know I need to move the 40 across the equal sign. Anytime I move across that equal sign right there, I know I have to do the opposite. Those cancel, 5x comes down, I got 5x is equal to 140. And then lastly, I divide both sides by 5 at the end, and I get x is equal to 28. Now, the question didn't ask us, or we're not trying to find out just what x is. Sometimes you might, but we're trying to find out what angle R, angle S, and angle T equal. So if I'm trying to find out what the angles are, I have to take that 28 and plug it back in. So we know from the problem that R is 3x. So I can take that 28 and plug it in right there for that x. That would be 3 times 28, which would give us 84. So we know that R is 84 degrees. We know that S is x degrees. So I'll take that 28 again, and I'll plug it in right there for x. So that would be 28. Very simple. And then lastly, we know t is x plus 40 degrees. Again, I take that 28, plug it in for x. So that would be 28 plus 40, which would end up giving us 68. So that's how you would find the angles of a triangle. So with that being said, write any questions down that you have, and I'll see you in class.